So next thing, let's go and look at different kind of solvers. We should just dive right in. This presentation gets highly detailed, but chains are just a lot of little details for the way people like to set up the limbs of their characters. That's really what it's become. It's a collection of tools that people have requested and just help out the animation process. So the first detail you can look at, if you select a chain, there are two things you can do. You can hit Control R, and you can get all the properties for the chain. Or you can this Kinney chain node here, there's only one per chain. Like if I draw a 20 bone chain here or whatever, if I go look at every one of them in the Explorer, you're going to see they all have a kinematic joint, but only the first one has a kinematic chain. And so you can have any part of this chain and you just hit Control R and enter it. So in the kinematic chain properties, you've got the type of IK solver. You've got a lot of stuff for IK-FK blending and some other tools. Whereas on the chain itself, you've got more particular control for that one segment. So you've got the pref angles, you've got the rotation limits, stuff like that. So if we keep going here, let's look at some of the different kind of solvers. So the most basic kind of solver is actually, it's not on the kinematic properties, it's on the chain itself. It's whether you're doing a 2D or a 3D chain. So if I do a 2D chain, I'm just drawing a chain. Say I just draw some crazy thing here. If I take that chain and try to move it around, it's always going to constrain to a plane. Watch what happens. Even if I try and draw it on multiple planes, if I go skeleton, draw a 2D chain, I draw a bunch here, and then I zoom out and I start trying to draw on other axes. Well, as soon as I start pulling that, bing, it constrains that whole thing to a single plane. Now if I go make a 3D chain, it's a little bit different. What I can start doing, I can draw on this axis, I can go over here, and I can go over here, and then I can take that entire system, and then that system, that 3D, it basically has a memory, a preference angle for what it's going back to. That system will maintain itself and will tug out into whatever goal the effector is hitting. Okay, so next thing we want to look at is some of the more detailed solver types. So let's just go into here, and I'll go skeleton, draw a 2D chain, and let's look at some of the solvers. So first solver we've got here is Softimage 3D solver, Softimage XSI solver. You don't really need to worry about this. Those two are very, very similar. I just go with the defaults there. The one you do need to worry about is the solver angles. So what that means, to understand that, you kind of have to understand what preference angles are. So if you have this on at use joint rotations, basically every chain has something called preference angles, and that's the memory of the chain, the memory of the pose that it's trying to maintain. That's right up here. So if I have joint angles on from rotation, if I go take this chain and I go tug it, if I go rotate this around the other way, then it will tug here, and just wherever you pose it in, that sort of becomes where it wants to be. Now if I go the other way, if I set up this chain and I say use preferred angles, okay, so I'm set up to pull this here. If I go rotate to the other side, it doesn't care. It's going to snap right back, because what it's doing is it's reading the preference angles off of this tab. So the only way to do that is to go in here and change this. If I want to switch over, if I want one of the, like a robot doing a cartwheel or something that comes in here, and I want the IK to solve from the other side, you just go down and you flip the preference angle, and then it goes and flips to the other side. So there's also some other options here on the chain types. So if we go and if we take a long chain, this will become a little more clear. So I'll go draw a really long chain. Okay, so if I take this chain here and I start tugging with it, you see it goes back to where it was, whether I'm using the joint angles or the other one. So if I go in here and hit Control R, what you can do is, if it says reuse joint rotation at every resolution step, what that's going to do is straighten it out. The act of tugging it is pulling this out. There are certain setups, maybe some kind of weird scorpion tail or something. In fact, I would use a tail solver for a tail, but just to know that that's there, those are the kind of options you've got for different types of chain behavior. And there's some other things in there in chains that, frankly, I don't think are particularly useful. Like, you can go on a chain and you can do things like you can say, oh, this chain right here, I want that chain to act a little bit like an effector. You turn on the pseudo root and then you can pull it. I think you're better off doing setups where you have the different chain parts connecting together as individual chains. That way you can have very specific control over your FK blends in those areas.